Hello, everybody. This is Greg. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending where you're at in the world. My name is Greg, and I'm an addict. I usually start off by trying to sum up a little bit about addiction and being in recovery and what all that really means. So a while back, a friend of mine, I was walking with a friend of mine, and she asked me, she says, Greg, why do you say that you're in recovery? You know, why aren't you recovered? And so I thought it was a pretty good question. I had to think about it for a minute. And I said, because one is too many and 1,000 are never enough. So that's kind of how I look at being in recovery compared to being recovered. Tonight, I'm going to speak a little bit about relapse prevention, topic I like. A lot of people, there's a big moral stigma around people that are in recovery, people that are in drug and alcohol recovery, that if something happens and you relapse, all of a sudden it's this moral failing, and that like all the progress you made doesn't count, which is not true. Between 50 and 60% of people that get into recovery or they start to try not to use anymore, 50 to 60% of them end up relapsing. So what's happened is we have NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse, as well as NIH, National Institute of Recovery. They see that addiction is a brain disease. So what is a brain disease? Because of the use of drugs and alcohol through a period of time, it has changed the structure and the functioning of the brain. So most people use the first time. Initial use for most people are voluntary, which is when people first start using. But over time, the brain starts to change by repeated abuse and use. So it can affect people's self-control, ability to make good decisions, and it also sends out these impulses to use drugs and alcohol. And so it's really, really amazing that that does that. And so that's why it's now the disease concept. So if you get something like, if you have heart disease and you end up going and failing and going back to the hospital and relapsing, it's very similar to the drug abuse. You're doing the same exact thing. Asthma, diabetes are all similar to that, and they're all relapsing diseases. So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about relapse prevention and what that is. So there's several sides of it, and there's a lot of thought on it. So I'm going to go with emotional triggers. I'm going to talk about triggers, emotional triggers first, and then physical triggers after that. So for somebody that goes to 12-step meetings, there's a saying or an acronym. It's an acronym, and it's HALT. It stands for don't ever get too hungry, don't ever get too lonely, no, don't ever get too hungry, don't ever get too angry, don't ever get too lonely, and don't ever get too tired. So when we're using drugs and alcohol, we don't think about nutrition very much, or what we eat even. Personally for me, in my story, it's obvious that I didn't think about, nutrition or eating or anything like that. Because as time went on, I ended up getting hospitalized and with pneumonia, and I weighed 124 pounds. So go figure that. I don't think there was much eating going on with that. So anyways, you want to make sure that you watch your nutrition. You want to make sure there's all kinds of different facets of, taking care of yourself when you're in recovery, but you definitely want to look at your nutrition and feeling better. Number two is anger. This is probably the most and the biggest emotional trigger that there is to relapse on. A lot of people, feel that way when they get into recovery, and you need to find a way to be able to kind of like work with your anger, process your anger. How do you do that? Individual therapy is one way. Also, as far as getting angry and feeling yourself, when you feel yourself getting angry, you could look into using deep breathing techniques. Get some guided imagery, which you can go online. You could just Google guided imagery, and you pull up stuff, and it will give you stuff that will be like a go-to you could use right this very moment. So that's the angry part. Lonely, on the L part, loneliness is probably a really big hallmark for somebody that's new in recovery. Recovery can be a very, very lonely process. First of all, we've now cut off our using friends, which we need to do, or we're going to use as well. And so it takes those people away that were in our lives. We may go back to the friends that we had previously before we got addicted in recovery, go back to family members or friends, only to find out that family member and friends might not be in a place where they want to take you back right away. And so there's that aspect to it. That's why I speak a lot about 12-step meetings, and just they're so valuable for so many different reasons. Getting to know other people, clean and sober people in recovery, getting a sponsor, having your sponsor introduce you around to the people that they know that are in the program, as well as fellowship. This is the way that what I did to build my own new recovery support system and friends and stuff. I had to go out there, and the AA and NA meetings are the perfect place to do it. We would go out and fellowship. After a meeting, and I get to meet all these cool people. I get to meet doctors and lawyers, and then homeless people, and somebody that works at Starbucks. And you get to know these people, and you start building relationships, and it helps you with the lonely part. The last part is tired. Don't get too tired. In recovery, when you first stop using drugs and alcohol, especially for me as an opiate addict, and us opiate addicts don't sleep very well when you first get clean and sober. It's just a thing. It just is the way the program goes. So, and we might not also be able to rely on any of the, chemical use that we used to be able to have when we go to sleep, not taking a Xanax or a Valium to help us sleep. That, that's off the table when you're in recovery. So what I've found over time is, we have melatonin, we have a valerian root. These are all, options for you. Chamomile tea. Like I said before, Google it. Google is your friend. Go in there and Google any of this stuff. And, you'll get some, ideas. You'll see some things. Say, well, maybe I'll try this, or maybe I'll try that. And that's good. So next I would like to talk about regular triggers, physical triggers that we run up against. You're new in recovery. You don't really realize it until you get in recovery of how much power these physical things, these sounds, these smells, these places, we don't really realize how much power they have on us until we're off the drugs. Music. You'd be driving down the street, a certain song will come on the radio, makes you feel like using. So what do? You change the station. Smells. For myself in particular, when I first got clean and sober, I would go to Oakland A's game. I live in the Bay Area. I'd go to an Oakland A's game or a Giants game, Raiders game. And whenever I would walk into a bar bathroom, it has this smell. I would think about snorting lines of cocaine, because that's where I used to snort lines of cocaine. I was in the bathroom. Paydays. For anybody out there right now that are in their addiction or even in recovery, I think we know what paydays are and how much of a trigger they could be. I know with the program that I work out, I always say to clients in a group, what did you do before you came out of your last paycheck? And 90% of the time, it's go cop some dope. So those are big money in your pocket. Don't carry large amounts of money. Anything I'm considering large amounts of money, guys, is over $20 unless you have a purpose. I never went out of the house with more than $10 in my pocket. Why? Because I couldn't cop for $10 or less. So, protect yourself with this. You just have to learn. Humility is a big part of this. So as far as, well, great, what do I do with my money? How do I protect myself from my money? So me, myself, my dad, when I got clean and sober, My dad was not really my accountability partner, but he was, without me probably knowing it. Whenever I got paid, I would cash my check. I would give the money to my dad, other than whatever bills I had to pay. And he had to manage my money. You know, people say, well, I'm 45 years old. I'm 50 years old. I don't have to have a parent of mine, you know, oversee my, you know, money. Well, you know, if you want to go ahead and cash your check and have $400 in your pocket, try that, see how good that works. But, you know, it's a big step in humility, the handing over the finances, you know, handing over the checks, you know, get over it. You know, you've got to be humble. You've got to be able to be teachable. You got to be able to walk this. I think if you saw any of the videos before, humility, people think that humility is a bad thing. You know, humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is thinking of yourself less often. Your baby's mama, she could be a trigger to you too, for whatever reasons. Anybody that's got babies' mamas out there could know that it could possibly be a trigger. Sex is a big trigger. A lot of people, most people, I would say, some people, 10, 15, 20 years since they've had sober sex. And sober sex could be very, very scary to some people. So, you know, you got to try some different things. You know, you got to communicate with your partner about what's going on. You know, try some different things, candles, whatever, you know, some way to relax you so you're not, you know, so nervous and afraid of sex. For myself, too, another really big trigger is going to the grocery store. You know, going to the grocery store. If you're an alcoholic, it could be a really huge trigger because it's usually not right out in the front. Sometimes now they actually have the liquor like up in the front, locked up now so we don't steal it in these little plastic cases. But most of the time they have it in the corner. They have this big display. Everybody can see it. And so an alcoholic, of course, has to stray clear from that. Could you imagine if we had methamphetamine on aisle 1 or crack cocaine on aisle 5? You know, it's the same. That's kind of how it would probably feel for an alcoholic to go through that. Exits on a freeway. You're driving down the street and you're going past this street you don't turn off on to go get drugs. You know, this is what you used to do, you know, 5 months before you got clean. You used to go down the freeway and just take off that exit and go pick up drugs wherever you're getting them off of there. So you have to be smart about it. I mean, what can you do with that? Number one, maybe find a different route. Number two, call your sponsor or call a friend when you're 5 minutes away from that exit and talk your way through it. There's nothing wrong with that. These are legitimate physical triggers that we feel every day. Motel rooms. I'm going to stop with motel rooms. Motel rooms. When I first got clean and sober, I remember I had to go take my drug and alcohol abuse state exam. And I think this is the first time that I actually went and got a motel room. And so I had to go up the night before, make sure I got a good night's sleep and all that. But as soon as I opened the door, as soon as I got my key at the front desk and I opened that door to that room, it reminded me immediately. Here I am, 2 years sober, right? It reminded me immediately of going, sitting down, closing the shades, pulling out a spoon, heating up the dope, having a syringe, and shooting heroin. 2 years after being clean, it had that power on me. So these are real, guys. These physical and emotional triggers are real, you know. And so you say, well, what can I, you know, how do I, you know, how long does that last, right? It's a good question. There's a thing, it's called Q extinction. I don't know if any of you guys know, familiar with Ivan Pavlov. He was a Russian physiologist. He actually stumbled upon this finding, and it really took him on a journey for the rest of his life's work to do this. What he would do is he found that if you rang a bell and put food down, and he would call the dogs over, the dogs would eat. So, and then what he did is he put a little test tube inside their mouth for the saliva gland. And so he'd ring the bell, the dog would come in and he would eat. So he did this, 5, 10, 15, 20 times, right? Ring the bell, dog would come and eat. So for Q extinction, this is we look at this as far as what our feelings are and our dealings with coping strategies and maybe taking some of the power away that that some of them can have. So what he eventually did is he would ring that bell and the dog would come, but there would be no food. He wouldn't put any food out. And so after a while, the dog's probably saying, what the heck, where's my food, right? So anyways, he'd ring that bell, no food, ring that bell, no food. And so after however many times it took him, I don't really know the exact number of times, but he did that over and over again. And eventually the dog would start coming for the food because he would associate that bell now with no food. So that's Q extinction as far as that, being, taking that trigger away. So anyways, that's basically my talk for this evening. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. And I will see you next Wednesday.